Welcome, everybody, to another edition of How to Beat Your Addiction with John Giordano. I'm your co-host, Scott Jones. I want to thank everybody for joining us. And please remember that if you like this show, well, you know what? Even if you don't like the show anyway, share it with your friends and make sure that you register or subscribe to the channel so that you can get notifications about our upcoming shows. We spend a lot of time talking about addiction and things that are affecting us in our everyday lives. So we encourage you to please share this with your friends and definitely send us comments. You can visit John at johnjgiordano.com. That's johnjgiordano.com. It's on the screen.
That's the letter J, not
the letter J, not the word J. Which would be like a blue jay, which you
like a blue jay,
which you ain't.
I'm a bird. I could fly around.
Yes. All right. So with that, I want to introduce our special guest that is coming from Tennessee, I believe, right?
Right, Memphis.
Yeah. Memphis, Tennessee. Excellent. His name is Allan Katz. He is a licensed professional working in mental health and with addictions and all sorts of stuff. You can also see him. He is the Healthy Intimacy Coach, and you can check out his website at Allan J. Katz, and that's the letter J, just like you, John, AllanJKatz.com. But for now, John, this is a great guest. So you guys are going to talk about addiction in a different form than most people might be thinking about, right?
Well, what we're going to talk about also is everybody thinks addiction is only based on substances, but it's also based on behaviors. And Allan, why don't you talk about what is sex addiction?
The sex addiction is, like you said, it's not a substance, but it's a behavior. And so it's treated a little bit differently. But it's basically doing sexual things over and over again, wanting to stop because you feel like it's getting out of hand, not being able to stop, and then it starts to affect your work, your money, your relationships. Medically, you can be doing things. So it's basically people that are doing a lot of sexual things. Everything becomes, even in their own relationship, everything becomes about sex. They're making sexual innuendos. They're kind of begging their partner, if it's good tonight, let's do it again, and tomorrow. And there's nothing basically intimate about it. And that's why I call myself the Healthy Intimacy Coach, because people that are into like pornography, having affairs, massage parlors, strip clubs, things like that are doing this all the time. We call that intimacy. We call that intensity rather than intimacy. Okay, the intensity of porn, for example, when it's watched, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but when it's watched for hours and hours and you're neglecting things that you need to work on, then that's where it becomes an addiction.
Well, so I think if you continue to use a substance or a behavior in spite of adverse consequences, we might want to see that you might need help. And also about the shame and the guilt that's attached to this. A lot of controversy, excuse me, that, sex is normal, sex is this, and sex. Yes, it is. But when it becomes where you stop putting yourself in harm's way and your family members, that's when you have to take a look at it, and where you cross that line, that what we call addiction, something that you can't control, something that you're always preoccupied with. I find a lot of my clients have been molested or, traumatized early on, and especially cocaine addicts also are tied to sexual behaviors like that. Do you find that also?
Yes, I mean, and that's why you have to do a differential diagnosis and make sure that this is not part of their bipolar or part of their co-occurring addiction, right? So like you said, cocaine will enhance the sexual experience, but is it about the cocaine or is it about both? And it's interesting because I had a sponsor about 20 years ago, and he was a sex addict, porn addict, drug, alcohol, and gambling all in one. And he told me that he did all these other things just to cover up his sex addiction, that his sex addiction was the core of his problem. He felt, after years of examining this, that sex addiction was the core of the problem, and he was using all these other things to soothe himself from that pain that like you said, the guilt and the shame are causing.
Well, you know what's interesting is, like, if you think, like a lot of my clients tell me that, you know, the sex is what drives them, and then they do the cocaine to enhance all of that, you see? And then afterwards they get depressed, even if they don't do drugs, after sexual encounters that you know is not good for you. In other words, you know, people that are using unprotected sex, you know, how you can destroy your family with that, and your job, and so forth and so forth. They always, you know, they always think about the sex first, and then the drugs come second. So that's how I kind of say sexual addiction is first.
Right. And on the other hand, they might, if they're using alcohol, for example, it lowers our inhibitions, right? And we might say yes when we really want to say no because we're inebriated.
Right.
Same thing with cocaine. You know, we're always looking. Cocaine and porn are very similar because we're always looking for that high in cocaine, and we never get there again. We get there one time, we never get there again. We keep trying and trying. And porn is very similar in that it, you know, I'm always looking for something more exciting and more weird and more.
Well, it's called chasing the buzz. Yeah. We called it an addiction.
Yeah. And then that's part of the addiction cycle, is that after we do that, we feel that sense of shame and guilt. And the only way for addicts to know how to get past that shame and guilt is to do it again, you know, because they don't know how to break the cycle, basically.
No, they don't. And what we're going to talk about some later on is talking about how to break that cycle. You know, unfortunately, it's not in the DSM-5. That's the book that tells people about the different diagnoses for people that don't understand that. But you know what just came out, Alan? I don't know if you know this. The World Health Organization said that it is an addiction, and they put it into their.
That's right.
You know, right? Okay, you know that, right? Yeah.
It's called ICD-11 is what it's called, and it was just recently put in there, included in the World Health Organization. If I can read you the little quote about how they describe what sex addiction is. They say that they define compulsive sexual behavior disorder as a persistent pattern of failure to control intense, repetitive sexual impulses or urges resulting in repetitive sexual behavior. That's how the World Health Organization defines it.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, our critics call us, you know, sex negative. Like we're not, you know, we think sex is it's totally not true. We're very sex positive. We're all for sex. We're all for limiting it so that it doesn't start to affect, like we said, all these other things, right? If it's dangerous and now you're going to give it to your wife, that's not something we need to keep doing.
Well, you know, it's just like doing drugs. Look, I'm a recovering addict. I have 36 years now in recovery. But when I did coke, if it didn't cause me to have adverse effects, I would still be doing coke, you know? And the same thing with sexual behaviors, okay? I mean, look, if you have sex, there's nothing wrong with sex. The problem is if you endanger your partner because you're using unprotected sex, if you're going out of your relationship, out of your marriage, and having sex with, you're going to cause a disruption in your life, and on and on and on and on. Then you have to take a good hard look at, you know, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Do you need to go get help so someone could help you to figure out what's going on with these behaviors that are causing a disruption in your life? And a lot of people say, oh, you know, it's a moral thing. It's this. No. What we call with Dr. Blum, as I told you earlier before we went on air, I work with Dr. Ken Blum. He's the geneticist who found the addiction gene. And we look at behaviors and drugs as RDS, reward deficiency syndrome, which means that you have a lack of dopamine. And what addicts want to do is they want to get that dopamine. And everybody has a different footprint. So some are cross-addicted, some gravitate to certain behaviors, some gravitate to substances, or both. So that's how we look at it. But let's talk about how you treat this behavior.
Okay, so the first thing we do is we do talk to them about the consequences. I like to start out with Patrick Carnes has a book called Facing the Shadow, which
Right.
is a workbook that it's a 30-stage model of how to get better, how to heal from sex addiction. And basically the first chapter is all about what are your excuses that you're using? What are the consequences of your actions? What justifications are you using to say that all this is okay? And so we start there, and that just kind of blows their mind to think, oh my gosh, this is much bigger, much more, many more consequences than I thought it could ever be. And that just starts them out on the journey. And so we go through that, we go through the shame and the guilt, we explain the addictive cycle, how to get out of it. And then we start to give them some specific tools to help them get past it. And so one of my favorite tools is what I call play the tape out. And play the tape out is go back through the last time you relapsed or the last time you acted out in your sex addiction and think about what the consequences of those actions were. Okay, now your wife is mad at you. You feel shame and guilt. You may have lost your job. You may have a disease, a sexually transmitted disease. Is it going to be worth it to do this again? Is it going to be worth a few minutes of pleasure to do this again and suffer all these consequences? So you have them step back and say, am I using my wise mind right now? Am I thinking about what is playing the tape out? What are the consequences going to be if I continue to do this action? And for a lot of clients, that helps them. Not everyone, but
that's a real good one. We do the same thing with drugs, exactly the same process. Because most addicts, they don't think of the consequences. They just think of the buzz, and they get more excited going to do these behaviors than actually while doing the behavior, which is also quite interesting, which most people don't get.
For sure.
There is help out there, but most people don't realize that they have a problem. And why don't we talk about, some of the things that show them that they have a problem?
Okay, well, we can talk about some of the consequences of their actions.
And COVID, what about COVID? Now, if you go out of your house and you go with a stranger, you could bring back COVID and kill your wife or kill your family.
That's right.
So it's even gotten more serious with these behaviors.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you know that because of COVID, the alcohol use in the country, even among women, is skyrocketed.
It skyrocketed. And so is depression and anxiety skyrocketed. Sure. And all this, all of these feelings are causing people to act out addictively. And that's because they're trying to medicate their emotions.
Right. And so that loneliness that caused them in the first place to want to search out other people or pornography or something. Now we got COVID on top of that, which makes them even more lonely. Now I can't even go out of my house and do some of those things. But of course I have the wonderful internet, which keeps me supplied with pornography and sex chat and all kinds of things.
Well, what's interesting, there's also a research paper on the difference between people that are addicted to pornography and people who are addicted to sexual behaviors outside of that. And usually what they say in this research that I read, that the people that are addicted to pornography are more introverted and the other people are more extroverted. Do you find that to be true?
Yes, absolutely. The people that are extroverted and they go out and be with other people or have affairs,
Right,
or have anonymous sex or pay for sex, there's a form of power there. Okay. If I can go and be with somebody, I'm paying. There's a link there between money and power and sex. And so those people that are more outgoing, they sometimes have a sense of entitlement. You know, that they may have grown up where there hasn't been a lot of boundaries or a lot of rules, and they kind of feel like I can do whatever I want to do. Nobody's ever given me any stop me, so therefore I'm an adult now. I've had a really good year. I'm making a lot of money, and I'm entitled to do whatever I want to do. So I'm going to go and be with some other people because it builds up my sense of self-esteem. But with pornography, it's like I need somebody to give me attention or give me affection. And so I'm going to go to pornography where, again, I'm in control of the situation, right? I can turn you off, turn you on. But it's more of the other way of addiction, which is I'm feeling a sense of loneliness, I'm feeling a sense of boredom, low self-esteem, and I need somebody else to fill that hole in my soul with that. And so I turn to other people and I turn to pornography. I have a really interesting example of this. I did some work. I had a phone group once, and I had a man who told me that every day after work for almost 30 years, he was going to an adult movie place. This was way before the internet. Every day after work. And I was telling him that if you can stop for 90 days, it's going to rebuild the neural pathways in your brain. And he said, I want to try that. So the first day he calls me and he says, I can't do this. These were my friends. They were my friends. I said, who are your friends? He says, those people on the movie theater, those people on the screen, they were my friends. And so, like, that shows how crazy it is. The people people up on a movie screen were your friends.
Well, it's interesting. You talked about the neural pathways, but we're finding out that the brain, okay, when you do these behaviors over and over again, you create a neural pathway, okay, where it becomes something that you just have to do, you know? And it's the same thing with changing the behavior. Like you said, 90 days, it takes 90 days to change a behavior. And people don't understand that there's a relationship between your neurotransmitters and the chemicals in your body and the way you respond to those chemicals. So, you know, also what a lot of people don't realize is that addiction, and I call sex addiction, okay? Just like gambling, just like work addiction. They go, oh, I have to work. Well, yeah, until you work so hard that, you want to give your family and to put a roof up, then you turn around, you don't have a family because you're never with them. So people don't understand when you're out of balance. What this is about is being balanced or out of balance, I believe. So, it's just addiction is something that permeates every part of your body, your soul, your spirit, everything. And in order to change that, you have to be vigilant. You have to seek help. Okay, you're not going to do this on your own. And people say, well, I can do it. I can handle it. Well, how you doing so far? And that's just the way it is. But what a lot of people don't understand is people have low thyroid, which can cause depression and anxiety. And if you're prone to addiction, you're going to look to medicate it. Or leaky gut syndrome, or H. pylori, which causes depression and anxiety, or low testosterone causes depression. Most people don't look at this. If you don't take care of those things and you keep on trying to medicate the depression and anxiety, whatever your footprint is, you're going to go in that direction. So,
I ask my clients, like, is the sex addiction causing your depression, or is your depression causing your sex addiction, or any addiction? What's coming first?
Right. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Exactly. So what do you think about, in Atlanta, about this guy blaming the sex addiction, which caused him to murder these poor people?
Right. Well, first of all, there's no real proof that this is really racially motivated. From a clinical perspective, he blames this, but really it's his own psychosis. I never heard before this. I never heard of sex addiction leading to somebody being a murderer. So
right.
You can't blame it on the sex addiction.
No.
Yes, obviously this guy has psychosis. He has a problem. But I've heard from some other clients where they're really embarrassed that this guy is blaming this on sex addiction, because that doesn't give you a blame. He's just blaming it on these women because he has a problem and he can't control himself. And my question is, like you just said, did he get help? Did he feel like he could do it on his own? And then it blew up in his face, and he got too much, and he thought this would be a way to get rid of it. But
well, I think the shame and the guilt was driving that also, but I also believe that he has other diagnoses other than what he wants to call sex addiction.
For sure.
I think they also were talking about he was paranoid. He might be paranoid schizophrenic. Poor impulse control. There might be a lot of things that are co-contributing factors to what he did. But what he did, there's no excuses for murdering somebody. So if you want to blame it on addiction, you could do that all day long, but I don't think that's going to fly in court or anywhere else.
And it's amazing how the media has just totally ignored the addiction, the mental health issues, and is, saying that it's an Asian thing, which,
No, I don't believe it's an Asian thing. I think the Asian thing was where he went to get, happy endings and massages in the massage place. It could have been, there's people that are Colombians that do that. There's Brazilians, there's Americans, there's all kinds of different spas that do these different things. So right. I don't believe it had anything to do with the Asian. Okay, but just since that's the hot topic, so now we're going to look at that. Oh, it's an Asian thing. I don't believe that was an Asian thing at all. I just think they happen to be, unfortunately, have to be the recipients of this man's delusional way of looking at things.
Right. What's interesting is that, just in this past couple of weeks since then, I'm getting 2 or 3 calls a day for people that say they have sex addiction. They're self-diagnosing that they have a problem. So something out there is hopefully making people more aware that it is a problem. And whether you call it an addiction or not, or a compulsion, it doesn't matter. If somebody's coming into my office because he's feeling a lot of pain and he wants to get help, that's what's important.
Right. It's not see, everybody gets hung up on labels. Look, if your life's out of balance and you're having all these problems in your life as a direct result of your behavior or the substances that you're using, then you have to go and take a look at that and get some help. Okay, that's the bottom line. You can't medicate feelings away. That's number one, okay? Because what you're doing is you're trying to stuff them down, and that causes more stress. More stress causes more addiction, what people don't understand. Because stress depletes dopamine, that feel-good drug that we manufacture in our gut that goes up to our brain. And most people don't even know that 90% of dopamine and serotonin is manufactured in your microbiome, the flora in your gut that goes up what is known as the vagus nerve into your brain and deposits it to serotonin and the dopamine. So if you're out of balance physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally, you need to get help. There's no shame in getting help. The shame is that you don't go. And people like Allan, myself, that help people as best we can, we don't get you well. You get you well. And that's what people have to understand. Okay, what we do is give you a roadmap to recovery that you need to follow. And it's up to you.
one of those things we stress is also getting in touch with your feelings, because for men especially, they have a hard time expressing their feelings. I'm fine, I'm good, I'm okay. But that's, once you can express and know what your feelings are, you can start to heal from the feelings. And also the idea that it's just a feeling or a thought doesn't mean I have to have a behavior to take care of it. Just because I'm hungry doesn't mean I have to eat a whole bag of potato chips.
I bet you just can't eat one. No.
Well, yeah.
But no, you're right. And the problem is like, like growing up in my family, you weren't allowed to show your emotions and your feelings. And, if you did, it was a sign of weakness. And men don't want to be vulnerable. They have to be this macho thing and all this kind of, which is, excuse my expression, which is bullshit. Okay. If you really want to show that you're macho, then you share your feelings. I've been depressed. Yeah, I have anxiety sometimes. Yes, it's okay. You're a human being. Okay. These things happen. But most people don't get that part, and they don't want to share I got to share it with a stranger. How's he going to help me? Well, how are you doing with yourself? You're not helping you. So maybe take a shot. That's how I look at it. So, addicts are addicts. We all do the same thing. I don't care if it's gambling, sex, work addiction, substance abuse. These all behaviors are people that are out of balance in their life, in their thoughts, and in their actions.
If I could chime in for a minute, gentlemen, Allan, I'd love your opinion on this. It seems that alcohol and drugs has gotten a serious amount of attention ever since Nixon's war on drugs started, and we've been looking at addiction in certain ways. Gambling has been in the forefront. People talk about it. You can't go to a casino without seeing a gambler, some sort of sign about if you have a gambling problem. But sex still sells. And it's not talked about. I mean, the blur between intimacy and sex is really perpetuated through TV, movies, advertisements, and everything else. So it's almost like it's almost not good to bring up sex addiction for advertisers and other people. So is it being swept under the rug, in your opinion, in society?
The addiction part, or
the sex addiction, is it not getting attention because we don't see it, or because we don't want it to get attention?
I don't think we don't understand it. That's what the issue is.
Right. Most people think that sex addicts are perverts and walk around with the trench coats on, and that's what they think.
I just don't even know if anybody even owns a trench coat anymore.
I do. Now they're going to think we're murderers now too. It's crazy. But it's just, I have doctors and surgeons, and I have people that do clean up houses and work in factories. I have all kinds of people with they're all the same. They all have the same problem, and they all. I do a group, and they all get along, and it's really nice. But you're right. It's interesting how in social media, they're trying to limit and tell us what are you allowed to call this person, and what's politically correct, and what can you say? But they're not worried about promoting pornography on their sites. That's okay, and nobody's talking about that. Nobody's talking about, is it okay to send nude pictures? Our teenagers are sending nude pictures of each other, and so sex in itself, especially with pornography, is sexualizing and objectifying women, and nobody's talking about it.
Well, what's really interesting, you said that about the young people sending nude pictures. That's so common today. We didn't have cell phones before. We had beepers. I don't think you can send a picture on a beeper anyway, but it'll beep, but that's about it. But, they send these pictures on their phones, and it's like crazy what's going on. And that's how they communicate with each other. They don't even talk. They text each other. They text and they do pictures. So, I know one picture's worth 1,000 words, but I mean, this is getting a little out of hand.
But you would be shocked at the 40 and 50-year-olds that are also sending.
Oh,
nude
absolutely.
pictures.
Look at the politicians. What, I forgot that guy's name who's sending his pictures, right?
I can't remember.
Yes, I mean, it's like unbelievable what's going on in our society. It's like Sodom and Gomorrah in a way, what's really happening. And it's just because we have so much internet use. There's so much, everything is real time. And that's how people are connecting with each other. And it's getting crazier and crazier out there.
It's depersonalized. We're not personalized anymore. And I think it's been almost the end of intimacy as we used to know it.
No, you're objectified. You're not personalized.
Everything is not personal anymore.
No.
It's all on a screen. So there's no intimacy. And that's really hurting us, isn't it, Allan?
Right. I mean, that's why I call myself the healthy intimacy coach, because I try to bring them from the intensity of all these distractions like porn and like the cell phone and like all these things. I try to bring them from there to learn how to be intimate with their partners.
Well, people don't understand, intimacy is into me, you see. And that's called relating with each other. And that's how you bond with another human being, by being vulnerable. And once you learn to be vulnerable, yes, can you get hurt? Yes, you can get hurt walking across the street too. So what does that mean? You don't walk across the street? So you have to learn, how to be open with your partner. And they want to do the same thing. Once you open up, they'll open up eventually. So it's that kind of thing that you want to do to get closer to people. But most people are very guarded and they don't want to get close with the other person. So they seek outside themselves so they could be anonymous and look at porn or go get a massage from somebody that, they're not have to be intimate. But the interesting thing about that is that after you do this sexual act, the depression that comes and the shame and the guilt, it's like, you're excited going, and even during, you can start experiencing that shame and that guilt. And then afterwards, you carry that, and then you put it in that room that you don't want to go in, and you don't think about that anymore. So thinking things through, like you're saying, reminds you of what you went through in the negative sense, not the positive sense, which will help you and guide you not to do the behavior again.
Yeah, you put it in a box in the back of your brain and you think, I'm just going to leave it there and forget about it and just move on. But it doesn't, it stays there. It can be like traumatic.
How can somebody, because this is such a personal thing, alcohol and drugs, you can look at it and say, okay, anybody can end up addicted, or even gambling. People can understand it, but it's almost like it's a deep-rooted shame in this. How does somebody break through that just to ask for help? I mean, do you have any advice for people who are suffering, who know they probably should get help, but they're so afraid to speak up? How do they break through that?
The idea is that we professionals, certified sex addiction therapists, or what John does, there is no shame in our offices. There's no judgment. I've heard this before, and I've had people come in and kind of stutter, or especially when they're making the appointments, like, well, what's your issue? I want to send you the right paperwork. And they go, I have a problem. They can't even say the word. But in our offices, I've heard it already, and I know how to treat it, and I don't judge them, and I make them feel comfortable. And it's, it goes back to that idea that I need to ask for help. And unfortunately, for some people, it takes hitting bottom, where they're threatened with divorce, or they're threatened with a medical issue or something, where they have to go get help. And sometimes I ask them, are you here for you, or are you here for your wife? Because your wife's sending you here because she just found out, she just saw what you were texting some other girl. Are you here for her, or are you here for yourself? And so like on my LinkedIn page, I'm trying to say, trying to stop the stigma, that this is a real addiction, just like any other addiction. It's not a perversion. It's not a moral problem. It's a disease. It's like diabetes or an allergy or something like that.
Well, everything we're talking about sounds just, if I wasn't talking about, I didn't know we were talking about sex addiction, I would think we were talking about substance abuse, because it's exactly the same as far as I'm going to. Yes, the symptomatology is different. It's just like, alcoholics are one way, addicts are another way. We have a little joke with that. It's not really funny, but it is. If an alcoholic that's drunk steals something from you, the next morning when he sobers up, he'll give you your stuff back. But if an addict steals something from you, the next morning he'll help you look for it. So, that's just the way, there's different things, the way people respond to certain substance and behaviors, but basically they're all rooted in this self-loathing, actually, which people don't realize, because you self-loathe yourself. How can I be like that? Why can't I stop myself? What's wrong with me? I can't tell anybody about this, because if I do, they're going to look at me and I'm going to feel more shame and guilt. And also the person that you're going to, like a massage therapist or a prostitute, that you're also hurting them as well, because you're adding to their misery. And people say, well, people that's how they make money. Yeah, maybe that's how they make money, but they're also a human being and they have problems too. Okay. So, and that comes into play when you come into like spirituality and how that's affecting another human, because you want to be selfish and self-centered. You want what you want when you want it. And, since you have money, you can pay for it and get that. So what are you doing? What kind of person do you want to be? So it's a very difficult situation, these addictions.
Right. And sex addiction treatment it's more like food addiction, where you have to have sex, but sex is good and you want to have it and it's okay. So how can I can't say you have to stop like with alcohol or drugs completely. You can do that for a while, maybe a month or 3 months, which we recommend sometimes, just to get those to get the neural pathways balance back. But it's all, like you said before, it's all about balance, and it's all about, I can have sex is good, but it doesn't mean I have to have it 3 times a day, when I'm 40 years old. Maybe when you're first married or something, that's okay. But when you get older,
third, fourth marriage. Is that
nobody told my ex-wife that story.
And what people have to understand is therapists like ourselves, like Allan and myself, well, I've been doing this for, going on 35 years. I've been hearing this forever, different stories. There's no shame in the game. Nobody's here to judge you. We understand. I have my own problems with different addictions too. Look, it is what it is. We're here to help you. And that's what this is all about. And the way we help you so you can help yourself. And that's just the way it is. But it remains that you have to be consistent. It's like working out. If you work out for a week and expect to be in shape, forget about it. You have to be consistent in what you're doing. And it's the same thing with any addiction. You have to continuously get support. You have continuously, as much as you can in the beginning, go to therapist. And when you feel the urge, you're going to go back to your therapist. Okay, you don't have to get addicted to your therapist either. Otherwise, you use that as a crutch. That's no good either. Okay, they also have SLA meetings, sex and love addiction meetings that people can go to. But I hear some other people tell me, I don't want to go there because I wind up screwing some of the girls there. So
there's all men's. You can make all kinds of excuses, but there's all men's meetings.
Right.
And let me tell you, when you hear the girls' stories in those meetings, you're not going to want to be with them, because you as a male start to stop sexualizing and objectifying women when you hear their horror stories.
Absolutely. Well, that's about empathy, you see, and that's where addiction gets cut off. We don't empathize. That's what I was saying about the girls that do massage or the prostitute. Where's the empathy? That's somebody's little girl. that somebody, I don't think when she was a kid, right, growing up, said, I'm going to be a hooker when I grow up, and that's the sad part of this, because it's a two-way street. You hurt yourself and you hurt the other human being also. And, you're only responsible, I understand, for yourself. But you got to take custody of your thoughts, your words, and your actions. And that's what we're responsible for. And, that's just about what anything in life. So,
well, gentlemen, this has been really informative. I think we can all agree that this deserves much more conversation, and certainly societally we should. Although, I don't think any addiction's ever going to have complete acceptance in society. I think at least there should be a better understanding, and that's not going to happen unless people talk about it. So, and that's going to help a lot of people when we take away the shame and guilt from this and have conversations out in the open.
Well, what's interesting? I was teaching at one of the colleges, group therapy, and I had some mental health people in there, psychologists, had a psychiatrist in there, and it was a group on addiction. And they kept saying, well, I don't understand. Why can't people just stop? So I said, okay, let's do this. I said, how many people in this group smoke cigarettes? So a couple of them raised their hand. I said, how many drink coffee every day? So a couple of them raised their hand. I said, okay, I want you to stop for a month. Oh, everybody got all upset. What do you mean stop for a month? I said, well, you want to know what addiction's like, right? You want to know how hard it is for them to stop? Put that in everything and see how you do. And I said, it's 100 times worse than that. Especially those who smoking cigarettes, you can get lung cancer. Why do you keep doing that? People can't, you have to give them something that's relatable to their life. It doesn't have to be the extreme. It could be in between.
All right. Well, listen, we're coming to the end of the time. Allan, I just want to remind everybody, this is Allan Katz, who is the Healthy Intimacy Coach. I love that tagline, by the way. I think it's important people understand what real intimacy is. So thank you for doing what you do. AllanJKatz.com. It's on the screen. Allan, you also have some books that people can look at and purchase on your website. Is that right?
I do. The last book, Hey, What About Me, is all about compulsivity and dealing with these distractions, and how work and tech and emotions and people can all be addictive, and how do we get past that and work on our character to get past some of those, work on our character traits to get better and to heal.
Excellent. They can also reach you through your website if they have any questions or anything like that. You're willing to help them out, answer questions, right?
For sure. Yeah.
Well, keep doing God's work, Allan. That's wonderful to meet someone like yourself.
Thank you.
That's helping God's kids, and that's my goal in life also.
I appreciate having me on today.
We appreciate it, Allan, and I want to thank our guest again, Allan Katz, AllanJKatz.com, the Healthy Intimacy Coach. And John, we're going to wrap up, and we want to make sure we remind people that if you like this show, make sure that you like it, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the YouTube channel so that we can keep bringing you more topics related to addiction and healthy living. And also about depression and anxiety, not just addiction. Which is all, I mean, it all goes together. It all goes together. So, John.
Okay.
All right.
Allan.
Hasta luego, right?
Hasta luego.
Hasta luego. We'll catch you next time right here on How to Beat Your Addiction.
Bye.